Well, hey, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being plugged into our spark plug, Danny Sheehan, and Sara Nelson as well.
So first, I'm going to welcome Danny Sheehan, co-founder with Sara Nelson of the Romero Institute and earlier the Christic Institute. Welcome, Danny. Take it away.
Okay, what I want to do is, before introducing Sara and then Ben, to give you some more concrete details about what we're doing, I want to give us a little update on the two pipeline cases that are going, the Dakota Access Pipeline and the Keystone XL pipeline. And then I want to make a few comments about what's going on up in Portland and get us oriented on that one. And then what I'll do is I'll give you a brief review over what I think we're going to be doing for the rest of the hour presentation, and then introduce Sara, and then she'll introduce Ben. Okay, so bottom line is that this past Monday, here we are Friday evening, this past Monday, all the briefs were due in the United States federal court in Washington, D.C., in the effort to shut off the Dakota Access Pipeline. As you know, back on June 6th, Judge James Boasberg entered an order commanding the Energy Transfer Partners Pipeline Corporation, the Dakota Access Pipeline Corporation, to shut off the oil in the pipeline and to drain the oil for the duration of their completion of a full environmental impact study, which we don't believe they're going to be able to pass. And so he entered that order, and they have, the Oil Pipeline Corporation insisted they were going to defy that. They weren't going to abide by it because they were going to appeal immediately to the DC Circuit Court of Appeals to try to get a stay. A 3-judge panel has been assigned to review that. I believe that there's a 66% chance that we're going to win that argument in front of the 3-judge panel, based on the personnel and their previous rulings, et cetera. And I believe that we're probably going to get that ruling next week. I think that because of the accelerated briefing schedule, it's clear that to me at least, that the 3-judge panel wants to rule on this thing very quickly. And so I think they're going to rule on it this next week. I know that Judge Boasberg set the date of August 5th, or August 7th rather, or August 5th, of shutting off the pipeline and draining it by that time. So I think the DC Circuit Court of Appeals panel is going to try to rule on this before that time to stay within the timelines of Judge Boasberg. And I don't think that the pipeline company is likely to appeal to the en banc, the full 11 judges on the court to review this, because there are 7 Democrats and 4 Republicans on that panel, or on that court. So I don't think they're going to do that. But if they do, the pipeline is going to lose again. And the idea is to hold them off. They're going to try to get to the Supreme Court and try to get Justice Roberts, who has jurisdiction over the DC Circuit, to try to enter a stay against Boasberg's order shutting off the pipeline, to try to get to argue the case in front of the United States Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court is out of session until the second week of October. And I do not believe that Justice Roberts is going to grant that stay. I think for him to do so would make it transparent, again, that the United States Supreme Court is just a functionary of the Trump administration and the right-wing business corporate agenda. And I think that Justice Roberts is very sensitive to that right now. And so I don't think he's going to take the extraordinary step of staying that order until the fall. So I think that by next week, we should have a pretty definitive decision about that pipeline being shut down. And I have actually begun a conversation with a number of other people right now about reaching out to the Lakota leadership, to Julian Bearrunner at the who is the chairman of the Pine Ridge Reservation, to Harold Frazier, the chairman of the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation, and Michael Faith, who is the chairman for Standing Rock, to try to get them to start to prepare to invite people to come to the site of the Dakota Access Pipeline, the gathering place of the Ochete-Socoan encampment. And on the Thanksgiving Day of this coming fall, it'll be following the November 3rd election of Joe Biden, is to come there and celebrate, to bring people together for a massive Thanksgiving Day at Fort Yates there in North Dakota, to celebrate the victory of shutting down the Dakota Access Pipeline and dancing on the grave of that pipeline. So that one's in the works. And with regard to the Keystone XL pipeline, there is an injunction in place against that right now. We covered that last week, and that is still holding in place. The Supreme Court has refused to enter a stay of the injunction that was issued by the Montana Federal District Court, ordering the stopping of all construction on that pipeline. We have people maintaining surveillance of the pipeline right now to make sure that they're not engaged in violating that injunction. And a peculiar step has been taken by Kristi Noem, the right-wing Republican governor of South Dakota. She has sent in people, since the pipeline company is prohibited from engaging in any of this construction or any ancillary activities to try to cross the waterways there, that she has designated the South Dakota State Department of Transportation to start doing the surveying and laying out the stakes for a potential roadway to get equipment into the area where they want to try to cross the Cheyenne River. So we're in the process of trying to figure out what to do about that right now. But the bottom line is that the injunction is still in place right now. We may need to take some further steps to keep the right-wing governor of South Dakota from trying to get around that injunction by contacting the lawyers for the tribe and to get them to stop that activity on the part of the state. So that's the update on that. And just an important note now, obviously everybody is very distressed about the events that are taking place in Portland. The tribes are gathering now, the public interest tribes are gathering in Portland now to stand in opposition to the troops that have been deployed by the Trump administration. He is using the Department of Homeland Security to mobilize a private military force or a public military force against the demonstrators there. And so this raises a whole panoply of fundamental constitutional questions about the authority of the president to do this. There are former chairman or former secretaries of the Homeland Security Department publicly protesting this now. 4 of the 6 former heads of the Homeland Security have come out in opposition to the utilization of the Department of Homeland Security for these purposes of suppressing domestic dissent. There's a number of people that we're talking about, some people who are on this call right here tonight, of trying to assemble a group of experts in the area of constitutional law and public policy to figure out what additional steps need to be taken to stop not only Trump from misusing the Department of Homeland Security for suppressing domestic dissent, but to stop any other presidents from doing it. Now, as many of you know who are on this call, as we're approaching 100, we're at 93 now. We got to call up your friends because we're still not hit 100 yet. That we at the Romero Institute years ago, having concern about this particular type of problem, we proposed that the County Board of Supervisors here in Santa Cruz County enact an ordinance prohibiting outside federal military forces from coming into our county and taking into custody any of our citizens on the grounds that they were either engaged in or supporting the activities of terrorism. That we were so concerned about a provision of the National Defense Authorization Act that was passed, the defense bill budget. They put in a provision, Section 1021, that specifically authorized the President of the United States to determine what private citizens, American citizens, were to be designated as giving support for terrorist organizations. And that they could be picked up and taken into custody, military custody, and placed in a military detention facility. Very similar to what happened to the Japanese Americans, pursuant to Executive Order 1066 that Roosevelt issued right after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And that led to such a shameful and disgraceful history of incarcerating the Japanese Americans. So that as soon as the shadow of that fell across our flag and across our Constitution, our Romero Institute mobilized and put together a proposed ordinance to establish Santa Cruz County as a constitutional protection zone that would prohibit any of these foreign military people from coming into our county and attempting to take into custody our citizens without due process. I met with, and others from our Romero Institute have met with a number of different people, and we met with Jeff Hart, or Jim Hart, the sheriff. We met with the district attorney. We met with members of the county board of supervisors. We had numerous meetings of citizens around Santa Cruz County to mobilize public support for such an ordinance. But we were told uniformly by the government officials that, oh, that's not going to be necessary because, that President Obama would never do anything like that. And Hillary Clinton is going to be elected president in 2016, and she would never do anything like that. So we don't have to do anything about this, but well, how does it looking now? Right now you got a basic constitutional criminal, in office as president, and he is deploying military troops basically into Portland to try to suppress people. And the president's going around basically characterizing those people as terrorists. And he's trying to characterize the Antifa, anti-fascist a group here in the country, be that as it may, as a terrorist organization of some kind. And, and Trump is so completely ignorant of legitimate constitutional principles that it's entirely possible that that he could start believing that he has the authority under Section 1021 of the National Defense Authorization Act to deploy these non-military military troops, who are border patrol people and people from the Homeland Security Department, forest rangers, federal prison guards, all dressed in military uniforms, to deploy them to try to suppress public dissent arising not only over the issue of Black Lives Matter, but over anything. Any major public demonstration against the administration's policies could trigger this type of activity on the part of Donald Trump. So we have that ordinance. I am prepared to give copies of that to people who want it, so they can see what we're proposing to set up a due process here in Santa Cruz County, invoking the assistance of the sheriff and the board of supervisors and the district attorney, the city attorneys, and the county attorneys to protect us here in Santa Cruz County against any type of incursion of this kind against our citizens. And we would want to be able to make that an example, if we can get it passed here, to make it an example for other counties. As you know, our former Christic Institute, immediately following the victory in the Karen Silkwood case back in 1979, and then the 3 Mile Island case, stopping the pumping of all the radioactive effluents out of the 3 Mile Island nuclear facility into the Susquehanna River, we instigated with others a campaign around the country to establish nuclear free zones to have county boards of supervisors enact these ordinances prohibiting the transportation of spent nuclear materials, through their counties, to show our consistent and thoroughgoing opposition to private nuclear power. And we succeeded in that and stopped them from shipping all of these nuclear materials to an underground facility in New Mexico. So in a similar way, I think we should consider mobilizing to generate new support for the ordinance here in Santa Cruz County to declare this to be a constitutional protection zone, setting up a major due process procedures to challenge any effort on the part of the president or his designee, as it says in the statute, to send military troops or pseudo military troops in the form of Homeland Security forces into our county to try to suppress public dissent in our county. So that's an introduction to this particular issue here. And so those two things having been said, updates on the pipeline and the introduction of this particular issue having to do with the improper use of the Homeland Security Department by Trump. What I want to do with the rest of the time we have, I want to give Sara and Ben time to talk about this, but what I want to be doing is what I introduced last week as our effort to mount a citizens campaign to basically take over the United States government by our citizens, to establish a progressive agenda for each of the departments in the executive branch, to familiarize you all that we want to have a seminar basically here, our Friday night seminar, helping to bring you guys up to speed on knowing how our federal government is designed, how it functions in the electoral system, how it interrelates with the committees of Congress that have jurisdiction over certain policy areas, and very importantly, to make clear to you how all of this relates to our California Green New Deal. The California Green New Deal has 13 different that we're going to be dealing with, and they correlate to a great extent to a lot of the executive branch offices. We deal with issues of transportation in the Green New Deal. We deal with issues of education. We deal with issues of energy. We deal with issues of soil and agriculture. We have 13 different areas which we will be talking about over the next few weeks to familiarize you with the content of our proposed California Green New Deal and how they interface with these particular agencies on the national level, so that the policies that we're proposing in the California Green New Deal for our state can be understood by everyone here and be promulgated as policy not only for other states to adopt, but for our federal government to adopt, because we are convinced that just getting back to normal on the part of the Democratic National Committee and the Biden administration, while in and of itself, that's a very valuable undertaking in light of the chaos that's been sown in our country over the last 4 years by Donald Trump, that getting back to normal is insufficient, because we cannot have a system where we get back to the normal that was proposed by the Democratic Party prior to the Trump administration of reducing global greenhouse gas emissions by only 33% by 2035. That is not sufficient. The International Panel on Climate Change of the International Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change of the United Nations says that we have to reduce our global greenhouse gas emissions by 70% by 2035, not 33%. That's the normal. And as Greta Thunberg has said, and we've talked about here among ourselves, she said, as long as you people in positions of authority are only talking about doing what is presently politically feasible, rather than what has to be done with regard to global climate change, my generation, she said, will have no hope. So our job is to provide that kind of hope to the millennial generation and to the next generation, and we need to know how to do it. So we need to take our Green New Deal sector by sector and understand what the policies are that we're proposing, and then take a look at the different departments of the federal government and the different committees that are in Congress to understand how we get the same policies that we're proposing here in California demonstrated to be effective here in California, and at the same time reach out to these federal committees in Congress, in the House and Senate, and into the executive branch departments that correlate to those sectors of our bill to get this thing to happen on the national level, so that we're doing both at the same time. We're moving it into place here in California, but we're preparing the way to get it moved into place, not only in other states, but on the federal level. So that's what we're going to be starting tonight as part of this seminar. And I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. I found it very interesting to study this at Harvard College and Harvard Law School, to learn how our governments function and what we need to do as citizens to make them work. And so I hope I can maintain the interest. We're at 96 people now. I hope we haven't scared off at least the other 4 by thinking they're going to get subjected to some sort of a government class. But anyway, we're doing that. So what I want to do now is I want to introduce Sara Nelson, who is the executive director of the Romero Institute. She is also the former executive director of our Christic Institute in Washington, D.C., and was the executive director of the State of the World Forum for President Gorbachev, and for actually former Secretary of State James Baker at the end of the Cold War, attempting to design a new post-Cold War set of policies for our planet. So she's extraordinarily capable of ushering through this California Green New Deal. And she will introduce to you Ben Eichert. Ben Eichert is a longtime member of our Romero Institute staff, is an experienced field organizer for the SEIU, the Service Employees International Union, and is the head of our Green Power Project at the Romero Institute. So with all of that having been said, I've exhausted the first
Thank you,
30
Danny.
minutes. So Sarah's up now.
Okay, I think I'm on. All right. Hi, everybody. I just thank you, Danny, and I just want to add one little thing to what he said. When we were working all together on the constitutional protection zone for our area, we had an alliance here in town. There were about 20 to 30 organizations that had signed up for this. We could not get it through the supervisors. I mean, we went to the sheriff and we went to the supervisors. Somebody in the supervisors had to lead it, and we were unable to get a person on the supervisors to lead it. I think that everyone is going to remember, because we did a lot of work and made a lot of contacts and had a lot of people on board. So we have to be careful about our time, and we have to be careful about what steps we're doing now, because we don't have a lot of time and we don't have enough money to have enough staff. So, but I think we could, without too much difficulty, pull together that list of organizations that was part of that. We'd have to dig around a little bit and ask them to reactivate their support for this. And then that could be taken to the Board of Supervisors now. And they might very well be more open to this than they were. Because Danny has a tendency to be ahead, and years ahead, usually about 10 years ahead of things. And when he initially says things, it's not always possible to achieve them, because the consciousness of enough people hasn't come along. This would be another example of this. At the time, I don't think the Board of Supervisors or the sheriff thought anything like this was going to happen. I mean, I remember the conversation. So what I wanted to do tonight is bring it back home here, because we have so much work to do here to get the Green New Deal, the California Green New Deal fully developed, and also to build the alliance around it and the advisory board and the experts and all this. So And people, I know people want to participate. They want to know what to do. So what I'm going to be suggesting right now is that you consider, if you have it, signing up for the alerts and emails that come from the Romero Institute and also from the Green Power Institute. You may already be receiving alerts from Lakota People's Law Project, but you may not be receiving them from Romero and Green Power. Those two email paths are going to be suggesting very concrete things for people to do. And we want to build the strength of those lists, the numbers of those lists, because those are the ones that are going to drive our effort, along with all of our allies, of course, for the California Green New Deal. And I asked Ben to participate with us because he's recently sent out 2 different alerts. To give you an example, now it doesn't take a lot of time to answer one of these calls to action. You know, you can answer it and it can have impact, because as it grows, as the numbers grow and the numbers grow, then when the letters hit somebody in the state, in the legislature at Sacramento, and the numbers are growing and growing, they notice that the people are asking for something or saying they don't want something. And that is going to be very important in this Green New Deal process. So first I wanted Ben to, this isn't an alert. First I wanted him to just share with you a recent victory, because we all need victories now. And this is in relation to the Monterey Bay Community Power, which, as you remember, the Romero Institute and Green Power worked very hard to double the base size of the Monterey Bay Community Power, which is our CCA, our Community Choice Energy Agency, which orders clean energy for our counties. So when we turn on our lights, we are not contributing to global warming. Not every area in our state has it. In our Green New Deal, we're going to be saying all areas should be joining existing ones. That is going to go a long way to eliminating the carbon emissions in the area of energy. Okay, but like everything else, you can't just win something and then turn away and not look back. This is something that Ben is excellent about. He understands that if you win, you still have to keep track. You still have to be organizing. You still have to be overseeing what's happening, because the other side is always trying to push it back. I mean, you know that when Trump came in, he rolled back everything Obama did in the environment. So there's this push and pull going on, and you have to stay awake. Okay, so, but our forces all together, our alliances, our forces won recently on another thing that happened with the Monterey Bay Community Power. Ben, would you mind please filling them in on what that was?
Sure. First off, thanks everyone for being here this evening, and thanks for inviting me to join and speak a little bit. So Monterey Bay Community Power is, again, the Community Choice Energy Program, publicly run, not-for-profit clean energy program that serves our region. And over the last year or more, it has started expanding beyond the Monterey Bay region, so that now it really stretches all the way from southern Santa Barbara County up here to Santa Cruz. Because of that, actually, they're going to be changing their name very soon to Central Coast Community Energy, but I don't think that's happened quite yet. But one of the things about, there's 2 points about Monterey Bay Community Power that I would like to share. From the founding, the agency put an emphasis on having what's called a power content label that said they were delivering 100% carbon-free energy to customers. It's good marketing. But the way that they achieved that was to purchase what are referred to as carbon-free attributes for a large amount of energy from hydroelectric dams in Washington state. And the problem with that is that the consequence is that there wasn't new renewable energy sources being added into the grid. And so that was the background. Earlier this year, PG&E, which has lost a huge swath of its customers to community choice energy agencies, approached the CPUC in California and said, hey, we've got all these carbon-free attributes from Diablo Canyon, and we're willing to sell them to community choice energy agencies on the cheap, help them save money. We don't have anything to do with them because our customers have left. And they tried to make a value proposition to CCEs, and a couple of most rejected it, but a couple of CCEs agreed to take on some of those attributes from Diablo Canyon. And MBCP was one of the CCEs that agreed to do that. And there was immediately a large groundswell of opposition to that at the community level. Now, the Romero Institute's Green Power Initiative for the last 18 months has been working hard to grow our movement to cover also the entire Central Coast. And we've been working more and more closely all the time with our allies up and down the coast, Ecology Action in Santa Cruz, the Community Environmental Council in Santa Barbara, the San Luis Obispo Climate Coalition in San Luis Obispo, and many others. And because of the work that we had been doing, these organizations are now meeting more regularly. Their leaders are interacting with each other. Their supporters are interacting more. And so this coalition came together around this issue, and it actually grew. Mothers for Peace in San Luis Obispo got really involved. And so we started pushing back, and we started organizing, and we started mobilizing and educating our allies that serve on the Public Policy Board of Monterey Bay Community Power. And even though MBCB had already basically agreed to accept these attributes from Diablo Canyon, we were able, thanks in large part to the immense pressure that Mothers for Peace put on them, to demand a special meeting of Monterey Bay Community Power. And it was held by Zoom. Actually, we had to push for that too. Originally, they were just going to hold a meeting and only read comments that were emailed to them the night before. But we demanded a Zoom meeting, and we got on Zoom, and there were about 100 people that were there and attending, and we got experts from across the state to speak. And at the end of that meeting, we were able to get them to postpone that decision until later this year. And then what happened is even better than that. What happened is the board understood that the community wanted the agency to go in a different direction. And so they had a meeting of their executive committee, which is a small subset of the board that governs the agency. And what actually happened blew our mind, and it's really great. What they said was, rather than purchase carbon-free attributes from big hydro dams in Washington state, let's take that money. Let's not be so concerned about the label. Let's be concerned about the future. And let's invest money now in building new renewable energy capacity. And let's put an emphasis on building some of that here in our region and our service territory in Monterey, Santa Cruz, San Benito, Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo counties. And let's set a goal of getting to 100% renewable energy by 2030, with as much of that being generated locally as possible. And so that's great, I think, from an environmental standpoint. It's great from a local governance standpoint. And it's great from a resilience standpoint. If we're building out that local energy here in our region, it means we're going to be resilient as a region. We're going to be generating our own sources of energy. So that's a tremendous victory. And I couldn't be more thrilled about this new direction for our Community Choice Energy Agency. The other thing I want to mention briefly is not, well, I don't know, Sarah, if you wanted me to also talk about the campaign that we launched today around the public banking. Did you want me to talk about that now?
Yes, please.
So I'm going to drop a link into the chat. I see Brett Garrett's on the call. I want to especially thank Brett. Oh, he's holding up a sign, Assembly Bill 310. Brett brought this to our attention because he's very active around public banking. And I have had the chance to participate in a few meetings of the sort of local public banking coalition. And I think it's really exciting what they're doing. And I hope that in the not too distant future, we're going to join with other Central Coast communities to try to create a Central Coast public bank that could help provide funding for some of these sustainable and green infrastructure projects and environmental justice projects that really need to happen in this region. But more salient is what's happening right at this moment, which is you may know that the other year, California adopted a law that said communities, counties, cities, or groups of counties and cities could create public banks. And a number of the larger cities, San Francisco, LA, and a few others, immediately sort of filed papers to do it. Well, there's a new bill now. It's Assembly Bill 310. And what this bill says is that the state of California will create a state bank. Right now, there's only one other state in the entire country, interestingly enough, I think it's North Dakota, that has its own state bank. And so this bill says that California would create a state bank. It would seed it with, I think, something like $10 billion. And that money would be used to invest in green and sustainable projects, especially in communities of people of color, in low-income communities, and it would help speed up recovery from COVID in a sustainable way that lifts up the communities that need it the most. And so Brett brought this to our attention. We were a little slow, I'm ashamed to say, on the uptake, but we finally got on it, and our team looked at the bill and we figured out where it was at, and it's currently in the Senate Government and Finance Committee. So we figured out who's on that committee, and we created an action today. And I dropped that link into the chat, and I'll do it one more time just so folks can see it. And so we created a form on our website that if you go there, you can fill out the form and you can send a sort of pre-written message, or you can customize that message. And that message will go to the chair of that Senate committee, and it will go to the chief of staff of that Senate committee. And what we hope to do is to show them that there is such strong support for a public bank in California, and for a bank that will invest in green and sustainable infrastructure and invest in the communities that have been hurt, not only environmentally, but by COVID, that need to be lifted up, and that they will vote that committee out. They will vote that bill out of committee. They'll let it go to the Senate floor. And once they do that, then of course, we're going to contact all of the senators to make sure that that bill passes the Senate. And then we'll contact the governor to make sure that he signs it.
Thank you. Ben, I just want to, it's very, very exciting. It's very, very exciting. Public banks are the thing it's one of the key links in the chain that can make it possible for us to create a new future. And the governor has given the green light to have 10 of them in California, but the nitty gritty has to happen for them to actually manifest. So this is very exciting, but I wanted to comment on a couple other things, and then I want to stop because we're taking up a lot of Danny's time.
Before you comment, can I ask Ben or ask you, it's as simple for everybody to go to romeroinstitute.org, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you will find, what do you click on to make it real easy to find this?
Well, the easiest way is to try to grab the link that I dropped in chat. I will.
Okay, terrific.
I'll make sure that I put a link right on the homepage as soon as this is over.
Okay, thanks.
It's not there right at the moment, but I'll get it onto the homepage.
Okay, thanks. Go back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing is green power. If you go to greenpower.ngo, it's romeroinstitute.org, and it's greenpower.ngo. It has its own website. It's our project, but it has its own website. Just make sure you sign up to get the alerts, because we're gonna keep rolling them out. And Ben has been working on a fantastic action center that is going to go into our websites to make it easier for everyone to participate and know what to do and know what things are up. But there's a couple other things I wanted to mention. We recently did another alert. They're called action alerts, call to actions. And it was calling on everyone to contact their representative in Congress to support the green COVID recovery plan, that we have to have a green COVID recovery plan. And really, a green COVID recovery plan can also be like a New Deal. So, I mean, there are people talking about how this now there should be a lot of synergy between these things. But so that is a call to action that came out, and maybe Ben could put a link to that as well, so that if you want to start taking action, you can do both of those things. They're the most recent things. More will be coming out. There are fights going on right now on the CCAs, the Community Choice Energy Agencies, that are the existing ones around the state. the industry is pushing back and trying to roll things back. So we will have some calls to action on that as well. We must preserve those, because that took tremendous effort to get those established and raised up in different regions. And we need to spread them. We don't need to lose them. So it's really an important thing. What I keep thinking is that people could, that all of us, I mean, we're doing this all the time, but that some time, you could allocate some time to these state issues, and we can make it as simple as we can so that it's easy to do it. And then there could be some people allocating time to the national research that Danny's talking about. It's just a matter of people deciding how much time they're going to commit to basically creating a future for the next generation. That's what we're all doing. And I want to end by saying, this is a spiritual mission. This is a sacred journey. This is a time in history like no other time in history. And it depends on what we do, all of us. So this is very sacred. And if we make a commitment from our heart to do the best we can in this time with everybody else who's making a commitment from their heart, we can make a difference. Danny? Are you there? I can't hear you.
Before Danny goes, hey Danny, just hold on. I did drop that other link in chat if folks would like the other action as well.
Okay.
Thanks, Ben.
All right. So now what we've agreed to do here is to try to assemble 100 people, ideally the same 100 people who are here consistently, each of the Friday evenings between now and the election, to try to demonstrate that 100 people can come together and through collective action can make a major significant difference, even on a national level, okay? And what we want to do is we want to figure out together how we can, through the vehicle of the California State Green New Deal, focus on a series of these, let's call it for round figures, even though there's 13 of them, the dozen major policy areas that need to be focused on here in California in order to lead the way in stopping global climate change. And we have here, we have here, what did I do? Here it is. Yeah, that we have a 4-page summary here of what all the provisions are in the bill, which we have available, that you can go to the Romero Institute.org and you can get the 4-page summary of what the California Green New Deal bill is that we have right now. We have here, this is the 50-page summary of it that goes into great detail about what the 13 different issue areas are and what the basic premises are of each of the different sections. You see, they have them all outlined here at the very beginning, and then you go through this thing, and it has all of the details of these 13 different sectors. And then we have a 350-page initial rough draft, okay, which we're anticipating is going to go onward up to like 500 pages.
Danny,
yes.
may I just make one suggestion, and that is that people, I just want everyone to know that this is going to be changing all the time.
Yep.
When John and I had 5 different Zoom meetings with 5 different leaders in the organic farming movement, John then took suggestions from each one of them, and some of those ended up in changing the document. So the document is a living organism at this point, and it is going to be informed by people who have expertise in each one of the sectors.
Okay, yes, that's right. So And so there's been this pushing back and forth about whether we should make this available to you guys, because it's going to be getting stronger and stronger, and it's going to be getting more and more fleshed in, and so that there was some concern about people looking at it and saying, oh, well, I can think of some additional things that ought to be in here. And so what we're saying is that's the whole purpose of this thing, that we're trying to get other people's ideas, recommendations, et cetera, in that while we're reaching out to the experts in each of these dozen different fields, that we want to have you as regular citizens participating in this process with us, so that we can all help evaluate what these different proposals are, and to get this done. Now, I raise this because this is the prism through which we're going to be focusing upon these different issue areas. And for example, here there's going to be the financing issue of how we finance all the changes that we need to make in the legislation here in the state of California. How are we going to finance that? And then we've got the green workforce, which is the green force, which is like the CCC that was under the New Deal of Roosevelt, the Conservation Corps. That this is going to be a huge employment process, where young people and other people who have lost their jobs in the fossil fuel industry, et cetera, are going to be coming to work together to try to build up the capacity of our state to generate clean energy, okay? And then we've got the whole education field here, that the people have to be educated about what the consequences of global climate change are. What is it that's causing the global climate change? What are the kind of alternatives that we've got to deal with this? And people are going to have to be educated as well about how to get trained to do these new jobs that are going to be created here by these activities. And then we've got obviously the transportation. Sara is very big on this pie chart. She said if I didn't talk about the pie chart, she wasn't going to let me participate in these things anymore. No, but anyway, this pie chart, that there's a big pie chart that shows you that when you divide up into this graphic pie, what is contributing to the sum total of carbon and pollutants that are going up into the atmosphere that are causing global climate change.
From California.
In California, what you see is that 40% of the contamination is being provided through the transportation systems that we have here. So that if you could, in fact, establish a set of transportation systems, rail, cars, buses, public transportation, subways, if you could have them all running on clean sources of energy, that we could reduce the amount of carbon in global climate change causing emissions into our state by 40%. And then there are other amounts that, for example, the electricity, the generating of electrical power in the state, which is very important, which is becoming more and more and more a sustainable energy source because of the community choice energy companies that are getting set up around the state right now. And so that it's now like down to 13% of the entire contribution, but it used to be up around 20 to 25%, but it's now coming down dramatically, and we need to keep working on that. So that then there's forestry management in the ecosystem stewardship. This is the entire issue of how we can reforest the areas where, for example, 60% of all of the forests were burnt down up in Lake County in these last several major wildfires that have gone up there. You all know about the Paradise that lost over 1,500 homes burnt to the ground. That we have to figure out how to restore these kind of areas of California through sustainable means, and to replant the trees and to grow the trees and to attend to the forestry and to maintain the ecosystems there so that they don't get all dried out and cause fires, and how to clean out the underbrush. There's a whole bunch of these things that need to get done. Then you got agriculture and food supply. Now, the thing that most people don't know is that if in fact you have land that is available to the county, that is county land, for example, that if in fact you undertake certain kind of activities with regard to that land, you can use that to draw down carbon out of the atmosphere, actually suck carbon right out of the atmosphere and lower the global greenhouse gas emissions that are in the air already. And so, for example, in the bill, one of the things that we're proposing is I've mentioned this in passing, is that every single community above a certain population has to be mandated by the state law to have a collection system that is going to be collecting organic waste materials. Okay, just like you have the recycling that goes around and the regular garbage people that come around every week, that you're mandated to have a collection system for organic waste. And of course, the counties are going to say, wait, I don't have the money to do this, but the state is going to have to subsidize this. So therefore, there's going to have to be taxes that need to be imposed upon the industries that have caused the global climate change emissions in the state. There's a whole complex of steps that need to be taken here. But for example, if you have a weekly pickup of organic waste materials, and they're all brought to a particular centralized area, and they're made sure that they're cleaned and they're available to be plowed into the public land that's available, that it's like a super victory garden that was done back during World War II, is that you can plant, you can create extraordinarily fertile soil in the county land areas, and it's going to be drawing down global climate change gases. And you can also have massive gardens and create, organic food and biodynamic gardens and stuff. And this is all under the heading of agriculture and food supply, because this is going to have the ancillary benefit of providing organic, healthy food for people in the county and in the state. Okay, and so then of course the energy, the generation of electrical energy is a very major issue. We know how to really get at that through not only through the community choice energy companies, but also various programs that can help inspire regular people to have solar panels and things on their homes, and also remain open to new technologies. There's all kinds of, like you've all heard about all the work that's being done to try to establish zero-point energy, tidal energy, geothermal energy. There's all kinds of other areas that with the devotion of state tax money that is imposed upon the industries that have caused the global climate change emissions up to this point, to raise those taxes and to use this money for developing alternative sources of clean energy, sustainable energy, to provide this electrical power to our people. For example, we have more shoreline in the state of California than virtually any other state in the entire country. We have more shoreline than most countries of the world, and yet we're not doing anything to capture the energy, the billions and billions of tons of water that move every single day through the rising and subsiding of the tidal waves, the tidal currents in our ocean. We can actually, there's technology that can be used to harness that energy to generate clean electrical energy. These are the kind of things that we need to propose in this bill, and to use the power of the state to actually get on the side of the people instead of having been on the side of major industry all of this time. Now, and so the next one is industry itself. We need to turn our attention to the industries in this state that are actually historically contributing to global climate change, not the least of which is the oil industry. The fact of the matter is that we are the third largest oil producing state in the country after Texas and Alaska. So what we've got to do is we've got to rein that in. We've got to figure out what to do with those businesses that have been doing that, the people that are employed in that area, to get them retrained and redeployed to participate in the bringing down of carbon and global greenhouse gas emissions instead of putting more up. And yet at the same time, well, Gavin Newsom is talking all about the need to roll back global climate change. He's still licensing fracking, new fracking licenses he's issuing. We've got to mobilize to roll that back and to stop that from happening, okay? And we've got to insist that the industries that are engaged in manufacturing and production of things install systems that suppress the emissions of global climate change gases up into the atmosphere. You know, they have scrubbing systems and filter systems and all kinds of alternatives. And we have to help subsidize some of these steps that need to be taken. And then the waste management, as I've said, you know, there's a huge amount of methane that's being put up into the atmosphere, you know, through our waste disposal systems here in the state. We have to learn how to capture those emissions, the methane emissions, to keep them from going up into the atmosphere. And as I said before, a lot of the organic materials, the organic waste materials, needs to be used to be developed to plow into the public lands to turn them into what they call carbon sinks that'll draw down the carbon out of the atmosphere. Okay, and then of course the water system in the state. For example, you hear all kinds of people saying, "Oh, we ought to have desalination plants." The problem is the desalination plants take massive amounts of energy to use that. But what we have to do is purify the water here in our states to keep our water clean. That this is all part of the ecological system. We have to understand that there are bioregions in our state that are built up around the water systems in that area. Up in Lake County, for example, they've got the Clear Lake up there is the biggest freshwater lake west of the Mississippi River, you know, and it's contaminated, you know, so we have to figure out how the state is going to engage in decontaminating some of our water systems so they can be used for agriculture, so the agriculture can be designed to draw down more carbon and to help water the forests so that our forests can grow to draw down more water. So you see that what we're saying here is if you look at these dozen issues that we're dealing with, and then you understand that you look to the federal executive branch, for example, and you see that you've got issues of commerce, you've got issues of environmental protection, you've got the Department of Agriculture, you've got the Department of Transportation, you've got the Energy Department, you've got the Labor Department that has to do with employment, et cetera. You got the Small Business Administration. When you look down the list, here's the list, you guys. Here's a list of 33 different federal executive agencies. That all of these agencies we have to take a look at. Over half of these things all have to do with global climate change. And so when we focus on what we're going to be doing here in the state of California to stop global climate change, we have to interface with these different agencies to get them to have policies that are consistent with the policies that we're trying to promulgate here in California. And the point is the same thing is true that when you look over into the Senate committees. Here are the Senate committees. Here's all the Senate committees here. See this big long list of Senate committees? You guys are all going to get to learn all this by heart. But these are all the different Senate committees, and the little red stars next to this area all right here. These are the ones that relate to the same issues that we're dealing with global climate change, and they relate to the same ones that have the little red stars on them here. Of the executive branch agency. See all these, or are the little red stars? The little red stars are here, I think. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be working with us here to give you sort of an advanced course in government studies like that you'd get at Harvard or Stanford or Yale or Columbia or any of these other places in order to start having you become experts in how to talk with your friends and neighbors about this. And what I'm saying is that then what we have to do is we have to look to try to figure out who the people are that are available to, who the people are that are available that are going to be going into these various positions in the executive branch so that we can determine which ones of those we're going to be able to get access to, because they're in fact, for a change of pace, actually in favor of doing the things that that department's supposed to be doing, instead of trying to counter it. You know, instead of having the head of the Environmental Protection Agency who's ravishing the environment and has declared war on the environment, we're going to have someone in there who actually believes in protecting the environment. Okay, and so what we want to do is we want to go through the different kind of people that are available, so that we can be involved in the conversation. This is going on right now about who are going to be in those positions. Who's going to be the head of the Department of Agriculture? You know, who's going to be in charge of the Department of Transportation? Who's going to be in charge of all of these different places? And so what we want to do is we want to figure out from the top down. You'll see I've got this other list over here. This over here is the list of all of the different positions that are going to be filled in the government. And so we have to figure out who we think some logical candidates are that are going to be in these positions. For example, like right now, let's look, for example, in the Biden administration. I think it's reasonable to say that we're going to have a Biden administration. Let's not waste all of our time, talking about, oh, what happens if Trump wins? It's possible Trump could conceivably win, but it ain't likely. Okay, so we've got to make a decision. This is called decision tree analysis. This is the kind of analysis that Lawrence Tribe teaches at Harvard Law School. Don't waste a whole lot of your time worrying about something that there's like a 3% chance is going to happen, and divide your time between planning for the 97% probability at the same amount of time on the 3% possibility. Don't waste your time on that. Other people are going to be working on trying to figure out how to get Trump out of office if he loses and refuses to leave, okay? It isn't likely you and I are going to do that, okay? Unless Larry Tribe calls me and asks me to come help do that. But the bottom line is that we've got to say the vice presidential choices going on now, that none of us have been involved in the process, and they're saying, oh, well, okay, Biden has decided he's going to have a woman for vice president. Okay, how did that happen? Because all the women's organizations were beating the crap out of him and telling him he had to have a woman to be vice president. And then, of course, the Black Caucus got going, and the Black women got going, and the Black people were saying, well, it's got to be a Black woman to be vice president. So they're all participating in this process, but you're not, okay? And your friends aren't, and your neighbors aren't. So that what we've got to do is figure out how we are going to participate in this process as well. This decision about who the vice president is going to be is coming up pretty soon right now. So now the conversation is all going on right now. Is it going to be Kamala Harris, as I've been predicting it's going to be for the last 2.5 years, or is Susan Rice going to actually edge her out? Because it might actually be important to have someone in there who could actually be president instead of being the attorney general, which is what Kamala Harris should be doing instead of being the vice president. Okay, and so that there's all kinds of other people that are involved. So for example, we go back here at our little list that I've been doing to prepare of registered Democrats right now. It turns out that Elizabeth Warren has as many votes of registered Democrats as Kamala Harris has. 23% of the registered Democrats want Elizabeth Warren to be vice president, and yet that is going to be a Black woman, because the Black Caucus has been effective in getting into the discussion and getting this to happen. And of course, the Black Lives Matter movement is going on, and as you know, the Democratic National Committee is basically a chameleon. They will respond to the things that are going on, and so they're saying, okay, well, let's look at the top 10 Black women in the country, to the point where they get all the way down to talking about Val Demings, because Val Demings, who is a Black woman congressperson from Florida, was a chief of police before she became a congresswoman. And so all of a sudden she gets considered to be one of the top 10 contenders for the vice presidential office, and she's just barely become a congressperson. So those aren't the best ways to go about deciding who the vice president of the United States is going to be. of course. And then the question is whether the person who's the vice president under Biden is going to be the presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party in 2024. So in addition to us trying to take the steps that are going to be necessary to influence who the people are that are going to be going into the administration of Joe Biden, over the next 190 days, we have to try to figure out who we want in these various positions in 2024, because I think it's perfectly evident, that Joe Biden is very unlikely to run for a second term. He's going to be there for 4 years from 2020 to 2024 to try to, quote, get things back to normal. And then we have to determine whether or not the person who's in the vice presidential office is there to help win a swing state in 2020, or whether she's there to try to be president the next time, okay? And we have to determine whether we think that's a good idea, for that person, or is there somebody who's a better idea to be president of the United States? So that we have a 4-year project that it could be going on to figure out what the administration is going to be like in 2024. Because we're going to be way out ahead of everybody else who hasn't started thinking about what the administration in 2024 is going to look like, because they haven't even figured out what the administration is going to look like in 2020 yet. So I want us to be kind of forward thinking, forward leaning, figuring out what's going to be going on here. And in the context of figuring out who the personnel are that we're going to be recommending for these particular positions and figuring out how to get that recommendation into the mix here, we're also going to, of course, having to be figuring out what the policies are. Oh, yes, the policies, by the way, that's the key to this thing. But if you don't know who the person is going to be in charge of helping to formulate those policies, it isn't going to do any good to be talking about policies pie in the sky somewhere. You have to know who the people are that are eligible to be in the head of those departments, okay? So that's the kind of thing that we're going to be doing between now in the election day, November 3rd. So we're going to be trying to influence the policies of and the personnel of the Biden administration, but we're going to be doing so through those areas that we're looking at and going to be working on together with regard to the Green New Deal here in California. So and what I want us to do is, I started this discussion last week. I want us to go through this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be able to usher us along right now. I mean, I don't think, and you guys are the smartest people I know. And I think that if we tried to take a test right now, not an open book test, but just a test of, what the actual departments are in the executive branch. I don't think most of us could pass a test on that right now. And you're better educated and wiser than 95% of all the rest of the people in the country. And so that what we have to do is understand that a lot of people don't even understand that there's both a CIA director and a director of national intelligence now. There's 2 different positions. And then there's a national security advisor. Okay, there's 3 different positions that have to do with the foreign policy of the United States. And then, of course, there's a Secretary of State. And the people don't know that yet. Now, these are things that go some of them out beyond the narrow focus of the Green New Deal and the things that have directly to do with a dozen sectors in the Green New Deal. But what I want us to do is to get brought up to speed on what all these different offices are, who the people are that you think ought to be in those offices. And so I want to start dividing our team. I want to have our 100 people available and have access to your email addresses, so that Tatanka and Carol, who are going to be ending up doing a lot of work in this project now, that they've lured us all in together to talk about this, that we're going to be dividing our 100 people together to try to look at these different departments and have little teams put together so that you can look at who the particular potential candidates are to head up those departments. What are the different proposals that are floating around now about what the policies are that are going to be pursued by those departments? What are the policies that are going to be just, quote, getting us back to normal, which all you have to do is go back and look at the policies of the Obama administration and see who his people were that were in all those positions. And then how much more progressive we want those positions to be. And what we want to do is concentrate a lot of our energy on those that overlap directly with the 12 different areas that we're going to be looking at that relate directly to the Green New Deal and global climate change, okay? And so we can give a lot more emphasis to those particular areas. And so for example, if you look at the Environmental Protection Agency, you want to say, okay, if I were right now to say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, who would you guys want to be the head of the Environmental Protection Agency? Now I want you to think about this a minute. Who would you propose be the head of the Environmental Protection Agency under Joe Biden? Okay, I'm going to give you like 10 seconds to think about that. Okay. How many people said Jay Inslee? 4. Okay. You know, okay. Jay Inslee has written a full-throated environmental protection legislation and global climate change legislation for his state. And he's the governor of the state of Washington, and he's put out this very muscular program for dealing with global climate change. Okay, but how many people know? Let me ask you this. I'll give you another 10 seconds. These are these quizzes. This is not to make you feel bad. It's just to let you know how much more work we've got to do on this thing. Is how many of you know who the most forward-leaning member of the United States Senate is in support of combating global climate change? Okay, I'm going to give you another 10 seconds. How many of you know who it is? Okay, the answer is Sheldon Whitehouse, who happens to be the United States Senator from Rhode Island, of all things. But we don't all know about that. Okay, and so what we want to be able to do is the Romero Institute wants to be able to help share information with you to help make you a very, very muscled up citizen of the country who can actually reach out and help mobilize other people to become involved in figuring out how to save our planet from global climate change. Okay, and so now how everybody else? How many people thought that the head of the Environmental Protection Agency ought to be Al Gore? Okay, nobody. Okay, none of it, but he's another person. He's still young enough to be the head of the Environmental Protection Agency. He spent all kinds of time running all around the country, you know, trying to get people to worry about global climate change. But you have to also understand he's the guy that went down to Rio under the Clinton administration and talked everybody there out of making the standards mandatory to impose upon the countries to really combat global climate change. So a lot of people would say, I don't think he'd make a good head of the EPA. I've been hollering too much. I'm going to get a drink of water, and then we're going to start asking questions, okay? Good night, Colleen.
We're going to unmute everybody, and we're going to
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night,
Blessings.
Peg. Good night, Elise.
Blessings.
Good night, Sean.